the past 4 weeks, Mum and I have been making an applique quilt together. I designed this quilt at the beginning of the year, and the designs have been based on Valentine devotionals from the medieval to the 1900s. As we make each block and I see it come to life, I've realised changes need to be made to match my vision, so I'm constantly rejigging the pattern sheets. Sometimes things will look a lot different from a computer screen to real life. This week's design features 2 lovebirds, and I was heavily inspired by William Morris. William Morris was a British textile and wallpaper designer, artist, writer, and social activist who lived from 1834 to 1896. He was one of the most significant figures of the arts and crafts movement, a movement that aimed to revive traditional crafts and emphasize the importance of handcrafted goods. Morris played a significant role in the revival of quilting during the arts and crafts movement. He created many intricate designs and patterns that were inspired by traditional quilts, and his work helped to elevate quilting from a functional craft to a form of decorative art. Art in Australia is diverse. However, there is a lot of European influences mixed with the unique beauty of the natural landscape. We live bordering onto a national park, and Sydney is surrounded by 2 national parks. The native birds are always out singing, and in this block I wanted to capture the movement of the lovebirds. It's occurred to me I've been designing applique patterns for almost 6 years now, and it's really interesting to reflect on the history of applique. Applique is a decorative art form that involves attaching one piece of fabric on top of another. The art form is used to enhance garments, quilts, and various other textiles. Applique has a rich and diverse history that dates back thousands of years. The origins of applique can be traced back to ancient Egypt, where the technique was used to decorate garments with intricate designs. The Egyptians used a variety of materials to create their applique designs, including linen, wool, and leather. These designs were created using a needle and thread to sew the fabric pieces onto garments. Applique techniques spread throughout the world, with different regions adopting their styles and approaches in the art form. In China, the technique was used primarily to decorate silk garments worn by the elite, while Indian and African cultures used the technique to create stunning textiles that showcase their cultural heritage. However, it wasn't until the Renaissance era in Europe that the techniques gained widespread popularity. Wealthy families would commission artists to create elaborate coat of arms, and the applique technique was used to create these designs. During this period, embroidery and needlework were popular leisure pursuits, and the application of textiles was a significant part of the creative process. As time passed, the technique became more accessible, and as it did, it continued to evolve. By the 19th century, the applique technique had become an essential part of everyday life, and the Industrial Revolution played a significant role in this development. Fabric designs became more intricate, and the use of colour expanded opportunities to create more and unique eye-catching designs and styles of applique. In the early 20th century, the technique became increasingly popular as Art Deco and Art Nouveau styles developed. Applique was used extensively in clothing and textile design during this period, especially in fashion. However, by the mid-20th century, applique became more of a hobby than an essential skill to create clothing and textiles. In the modern era, applique has enjoyed a resurgence as textiles and designers have rediscovered its potential. Today, the technique is used to create a variety of different looks and can be seen within the fashion world. The use of applique allowed families to showcase their cultural identity by incorporating their own unique patterns, designs, and motifs into clothing and quilts. This helped preserve cultural identity and helped celebrate their roots. Mum's stitching our quilt with sketchy applique. This is a free motion technique where you think of the needle as a pencil and outline the shapes 3 or 4 times and sketch in the details. She aims to sew about 1/16 from the edge of the shape. She doesn't aim to sew all of the rows on the top of each other. Sometimes she sews outside the shape, but that doesn't bother her as she knows that there is enough of the rows of stitching to hold the shapes in place. It's sketchy and freeform. A little bit of fraying is also a characteristic of this technique, and sometimes it's a bit messy, but Mum loves it. It isn't about perfection, but creating an organic effect, and as a beginner quilter, I've loved learning how to do it. The Fabric of Society by Annette Gero is a book that explores the history and significance of quilts in Australia. The book documents the stories behind over 100 different quilts and illustrates their individual and collective importance in shaping Australian culture and national identity. This can be seen in the Raja quilt, which is one of Australia's most important textiles. It's a great work of documentary importance in Australia's history and is also an extraordinary work of art, a product of beauty from the hands of many women who, while in the most horrific circumstances, were able to work together to produce something of hope. The Raja quilt was made by female convicts on board the Raja ship, which set sail from London in 1841 to Tasmania. In 1816, a lady named Elizabeth Fry, who was concerned with the plight of women prisoners during the transportation to Australia, formed the Quaker group, the British Ladies' Society for the Reformation of Female Prisoners. One of the many improvements the society implemented was to offer prisoners useful tasks such as needlecraft to keep them occupied during incarceration. The society donated sewing supplies including tape, 10 yards of fabric, 4 balls of white cotton sewing thread, a ball of each black, red and blue thread, black wool, 24 hanks of coloured thread, a thimble, 100 needles, threads, pins, scissors, and 2 pounds of patchwork pieces, or almost 10 metres of fabric. From the quilt's 2,815 pieces, we can see the cross-section of contemporary textile technology of this period, its patterns, printing techniques, and design influences. While we do not know the women who worked on it, we can see there was a considerable variation in skills. Among the women on the voyage of the Raja were 15 whose occupations were listed as tailoring or needlework. However, there are still small blood stains on the quilt today, probably from pricked fingers of some of the less skilled workers. The Raja quilt has miraculously endured the ravages of time and physical decay to provide us with a tangible link to Australia's fragile early history and the women who transcended their conditions to work together in the service of art. I've always said while men throughout history have held the sword and the pen, women have held the needle and thread, and they've woven their unique stories throughout the fabric of time. Even though we'll never know their names, their essence lives on, leaving a rich and detailed history of their life. And to me, this is the power of quilting.